Hey everyone, I'm Matt, and welcome to the Mr. Maple Show. Today we have a heavily requested topic for you. We're diving into the Area 51 collection, and specifically we're covering the Pendulous Treasures collection by Mr. Maple. So we have this Pendulous Treasures collection, and these are very unique plants, either introduced here to our nursery or introduced into the country by us. So they're very unique. They're ones you don't see a lot of other times, and we wanted to get them on camera for you and discuss these. We're actually shooting this in late July, so your colors will be indicative of late July. But we wanted to get these special trees on camera while we had them all here in 1 gallon to kind of get out here and talk to you about these a little bit.
And I'm Tim, and we're the Maple guys. We're Matt and Tim. We're brothers here in Western North Carolina, and we do over 1,000 varieties of Japanese maple shipped directly to your door. Like, subscribe, and share this video, and make sure you sign up for weekly emails on MrMaple.com. We do our best to bring you cool and interesting plants every single week through our 10 at 10 emails. You'll definitely want to be a part of that email.
So let's get right into it. The Pendulous Treasures collection are unique weeping forms. These are going to have, forms of weeping palmate style leaves that are indicative of Ryusin, Ryusei, or Jiro Shidari. So they're going to be in that vein of a weeping, low cascading type. Typically with these style Japanese maples, you stake them up, you get more height. If you don't, they're going to be more ground cover sizes. Now, all these are going to be extremely pendulous and extremely popular for that small weeping habit.
I think before you mentioned earlier that these first 4 we're going to be talking about are all from Japan.
Yeah.
And then the last 3 are all introductions here at Mr. Maple, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So these are very unique, very different. I think this one is the granddaddy of them all.
Yeah, we obviously didn't name this one. This is Nakakomoto Weeping. This was the original OG of the weeping Japanese maples. Tim and I got to go and see a 400-year-old Japanese maple when we were in Japan, and we sought this one out because it is a national treasure of Japan. It is a historic place there. You can go and visit with the Japanese maple that's been around so many years. Like, we've even said in some videos 600 years. I can confirm 400 for sure. Some people, there's different stories when you meet with people that tell you these, but we can easily confirm 400 years old on the writing that we saw.
The national treasure of Japan. I like Nakakomoto Weeping because it has this nice hooking habit. When we got to see this plant, it was breathtaking. Seeing this plant, it was in perfect fall color. Nakata-san was so gracious to take us to go see that. And it was an amazing, amazing plant to see. It's at a temple on a hill, and you just walk up, and they've got it roped off around this plant, and it's just arching and cascading and twisting and contorting. And the shape is just amazing. And it has stakes, wooden stakes, these big wooden stakes that are over 200 years old themselves.
Yeah. Really a cool thing to see. It's actually an interesting plant as it's getting out there in the United States. We've tried to help popularize this one. It's a really cool plant. It's definitely the granddaddy of all the weeping forms with this palmate style leaf. You can easily stand around this tree and just be in shock and awe of a 400-year-old tree. And I said this in another video, but you kind of stand beside something like that and you think of how much the Earth's changed since this tree was planted. I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. Now, we love this plant. We've since found out, since doing more translations, that Jiro Shidari was likely a seedling from Nakakomoto Weeping. Originally, we thought they may be synonymous. We talked to some nurserymen who said they may be synonymous there in Japan. My understanding now is that Jiro Shidari would be the baby of this one, and then the daddy of Ryusin. So that's kind of how you get into that lineage a little bit there. But Nakakomoto Weeping being the very original of that form. You get a little bit of orangish new growth this time of the year on the late summer flushes. Very small leaves. This one tends to be a little bit more width than height when it's growing, so it tends to be a little bit more low and mounding rather than being a straight Ryusin weeping straight down. But excellent plant. I always like to say, I'll have Brian throw in a picture of the original here, but you can plant this in 400 years, it'll look exactly like this.
Really cool plant. It's one of those plants that when you see a photo of this, you'll even probably remember it for a lifetime because it's that special. Next we have Acer palmatum Hoshizora.
Really cool plant. Hoshizora, I believe it means starry night.
Yeah.
And this is another introduction by our friends at Kobayashi Momiji Inn. Now, Kobayashi Momiji Inn introduced Jiro Shidari. They introduced Tsumukiyama, if you want to go back far enough. They have a long list of cool trees, but that's also the nursery in Japan that originally introduced Ryusei and Ryusen. So that's where Ryusen comes from. Amazing plant. Often said Ryusei in Japan. In America, people refer to it typically as Ryusen. Those are the same plant.
Yeah, and this plant, we had such a privilege and honor of going and visiting them our very first trip over there. Jiro, who Jiro Shidari is named after, came down and introduced himself. We
Yeah.
presented him a gift, and I think Taka was taken back a little bit that
Everybody's
him
so
and their
friendly, liked
grandson
us so much.
knew
Yeah.
who we were, and it's because on Ryusen and Tamukiyama and these selections they've introduced, we gave them credit and said,
Yeah.
hey, this was introduced by Kobayashi Mumiji-en, and they said, well, they've got nice things to say about Kobayashi Mumiji-en on their website.
For
And-
sure.
And it was so cool. And later on, the son of Jiro came by and was like, this is a plant you need. This is Hoshizora.
I actually think it was the whole next year. It was a whole nother trip
Yeah.
to Japan. We got to hang out with him. And Taka basically was like, oh, yeah, you went over there without me? How did it work? There's no translator. And I said, we had a lot of conversations without a translator. We had some sake, and we talked about Hoshizora, which we got pretty excited about. Now, what makes this one special is it's very similar to Ryusen. It's probably a seedling from that original Ryusen there at Kobayashi Mumiji, and it's definitely in its same lineage, but it has a little bit different fall color.
Yeah, we were told that it had a deeper red, and we haven't yet planted this next to Ryusen to compare to them,
Yeah.
but definitely pretty cool. It's their newest one of their newest introductions from Kobayashi Mumiji-en.
29 generation nursery there, still turning out hits today. So, I mean, that's like, if they were a musician, that's like 1,000 number ones they've hit right now, right, at Kobayashi Mumiji-en. So next we're on the table to Rikuzen Shidari. Now, this is one of my favorite ones from the Japan introductions. This one's a little bit outside the box. It's a little bit different. It almost doesn't match the lineage. Like, I think this one probably has a different origin than coming from Nakakomoto Weepin. This might be the distant cousin or the distant relative, but a little bit different genetics in this. I think of this one a little bit more as a leaf like Hogyoku or Osakazuki with a weeping style habit. So it's a little different branching than the typical Ryusen style weeping forms. It definitely has a graceful weeping habit. It is 100% pendulous, and it gets about as big as you stake it, but it's very, very different in its branch structure and color and leaf.
Now, we talked about one that was at a temple. We talked about one by our friends at Kobayashi Mumiji-en. This is an introduction by our friend at Tsukasa Maple, Yataka Tanaka. And oddly enough, it also comes from a temple.
Yeah, funny backstory on this one. He originally obtained the sign wood maybe when he wasn't supposed to. He had asked for some signs off this tree at a temple pre the tragic tsunami there in Japan.
And they told him no.
Yeah, and they told him no. Well, he did get some cuttings anyway. But
It was too cool a plant.
yeah, Dr. Creech argues if you got 100 nurserymen in the room, you got 100 thieves. Well, that may be true, but he had the good foresight to graft this one anyway, and the temple was quite pleased that after the tsunami, tragically the temple had been hit with some waves. The original tree had been lost, and so the temple was still there. It's still a location, but the tree itself was no more. And our friend was able to go and return them a very massive, nice specimen of Rikuzen Shidari, and he said it's a testament to people to share. So there you go. I think they were quite pleased to get it back in the long story. I think it's a happy ending story there, because I think because of that we have this one in the trade, and it's an amazing plant. Now, I mentioned Hogyoku and Osakazuki. This tree has an amazing yellow fall color. So very different color than anything else on the table. It is a very bright golden yellow, very unique in that. Gets a little couple hints of orange in it, but just really, really nice yellow to it. Large foliage, very large foliage, and I think an awesome plant. I would say from the ones from Japan, it may be my favorite, just because it doesn't fit in with the others. It's very different.
It's hard to compete with Nakakomoto Weepin to me,
I
but
mean, once I've
this one
seen
is
that
so
one, yeah.
unique and so different. Now with Rikuzen Shidari, if you really want to get this in that traditional shape, stake it up, let it cascade down, and it's going to have that nice weeping habit like we saw at Tsukasa Maple. And really unique and different because this one has that larger leaf. I mean, that's what really makes this one super special, is that larger Aminum Osakazuki style leaf.
So this one leafs out with a little bit of a pinkish border to it sometimes in the early spring. I wouldn't consider it Tsumagaki-like in that it holds that very long. I've certainly had people ask, because there's some amazing photos that Brian's done of this one in the early spring, and you could definitely see those pink hits around the leaf. Doesn't hold quite as long as Tsumagaki, but it is a neat feature to mention.
Love this plant, really unique, really special because it's so unique with that yellow fall color and these larger leaves.
For sure.
So next up, we've got Acer palmatum chica. This is an amazing plant by some of our good friends.
Yeah, Kojima, the Kojima family there. They actually were visiting us when they were interning for Brian Upchurch many, many years ago. And it was so cool when we went to Japan. We decided to go and visit Kojima. And they introduced us to tonkatsu. We went out to eat and had some just amazing tonkatsu.
I
with
think
them.
our whole trip in
Oh my
Japan,
gosh.
all we did was eat tonkatsu.
It changed our whole perspective. It's like a fried pork cutlet with some barbecue sauce, and that sounds pretty good to some Southerners. I'm not gonna lie. Like, y'all got barbecue and pork chops, I'm in. So it was delicious. It's one of my favorite things in Japan for sure is the tonkatsu. But Chika is named after Chikako Kojima. So beautiful plant there that they had actually founded a temple as well and put a working name on.
From his wife's hometown.
Yeah.
And amazing plant. Can give you some yellows and oranges. We've seen some reds in the greenhouses,
Yeah.
but
a little bit more orange than most.
yeah, and has a very nice weeping cascading umbrella habit. We saw it in Japan at Kojima's, and we were shocked. We're like, "What is this?" And he was like, "Well, I may have one around here."
Right.
So,
One of the things that really strikes me about this one, it's one of the smallest foliages of any of the Ryusen styles. So very small foliage. Also, it has very nice, crisp green bark. So I would almost think of it as almost like an Aoyagi style into a Ryusen. The bark is always a very nice light green to it and very, very small foliage. When you're growing it side by side with some of the other styles like Ryusen, it certainly stands out. It has a very crisp look to the foliage, and it's very small, tight packed foliage that just looks very different and unique, especially when it gets into that orangey fall color.
yeah, amazing plant.
All right, so we've covered the 4 basic ones that we like a lot from Japan, adding in the Nakakomoto to this series. We'll get into a few of the Mr. Maple introductions. The last 3 here on the table are all trees that we've named and evaluated here at Mr. Maple. And keeping with that Japanese theme, oftentimes in Japan, trees will be named after waterfalls that are prevalent in that region. Well, we really like that, and we really like the name Looking Glass Falls. That's a prominent waterfall here in western North Carolina. So when we found a seedling that we liked, we named it Looking Glass Falls.
Now, the neat thing about this one is in the early spring, this one does give you a purple-red border to it. And so you get a weeping style with a purple-red border to it, heavily cascading. And you'll see in the new growth flushes during the summer don't really show much of the purple-red, but more of just a coral pink new growth. But that spring, that's where this one really has that almost Murasaki Kiyohime style foliage of that purple-red border to it that makes it so unique.
Now, leafing this out slower will give you a better border and longer. It's going to have that Kiyohime type look to a Ryusen style. I was really impressed with even Aaron Dragcest's photos there in Southern California in his heat. Leafing out, still having a great purple border to it. It's definitely a fainter border than like Kiyohime, but it's by far the best variation of that style border on a Ryusen style to date. We love it for its unique characteristic. Everybody that sees this one in the early spring is like, that's really cool. I think when Open House happened, we still had a little bit of that going on. These were getting swiped up pretty quick at Open House this year.
Everybody was coming for Open House, asking for Looking Glass Falls, and we had them hidden in a lower greenhouse because they were coming up on the next 10 at 10. And when that happened, we had to go down and keep sending people down to grab Looking Glass Falls for those people who were at our open house who were asking for it by name.
Exact same shape you're familiar with Ryusen. It's going to be a weeping style that gets about as tall as you stake it. I've had some reds on this one in the fall to kind of oranges, but it's going to be probably fairly similar to Ryusen as far as that goes. A little bit more ruffled leaf and definitely a more interesting purple border in the early spring.
Extremely cascading on Looking Glass Falls.
Yeah, I mean, you can see on these.
And
extremely durable. These have done good anywhere Ryusen's grown. So, I mean, I would compare it to Ryusen as far as durability as well.
Definitely. So next up, we have one of our favorites from this collection, and one of the fan favorites from this collection as well, Acer Palmatum Dragon Master.
You've probably seen this one if you followed Mr. Maple at all. This one tends to sell out quickly for us. This is my favorite form of yellow Ryusen. This is a weeping yellow form here that just has some amazing color changes. We compare this one to more, it's a little more durable, but I compare this one more to Orange Dream in its color. It's almost like a weeping Orange Dream. So you can think of this one as like Palmatum or Ryusen X Orange Dream if you're looking for a color palette and a shape. Shape of Ryusen, color of Orange Dream.
And the new growth flushes on the spring can be orange themselves.
Oh, for sure. Very
And then
orange.
right now it's more of an orange pink that faded out a little bit, but then that goes to that yellow color that Dragon Master's known for with that extremely cascading habit.
This one gets about as big as you stake it, so you can stake that one up to a desired height. With any of these, I typically like to stake them to about 5 to 6 feet and then just kind of let them do their thing from there. Check out our full video on Dragon Master. Awesome plant. One we've been evaluating here. We can't do enough of it at Mr. Maple. We're always bumping up the numbers on this one. So if you don't see it currently in stock when you're watching this video, sign up for the email. It'll be back in stock. It's one we tend to do several thousand of a year.
Love this plant. It gives you some good yellow color. That yellow color is really awesome to use in a weeping style. And the reason being is it can contrast so well with things like Tamukiyama or a Bloodgood. And you can pair it so well with those to really give you that bright yellow color out there in the garden and landscape.
So this is one of those trees we named here at the nursery where, well, look at that one. That one's ready for one of Alan's weeping baskets right now, isn't it? Look at that. That's kind of crazy. We're all the way down here. We could stake this one up and have a pretty good sized 3-gallon next year if we wanted. This is an extremely weeping one. I think a lot of folks don't really understand this one because it confuses them. It almost looks like a lace leaf, but think of this one more shaped like Ryusin. This one is Fountain of Youth.
Now the neat thing that we liked about this one in a batch of seedlings that we were going through is that the leaf were almost like fingers. And so it was very different from all the other styles. And in that same batch was Looking Glass Falls. And this one was just so unique and different in the fact that it had that finger-like foliage of that more almost Matsumuri style leaf, but yet it still had that same weeping habit like Ryusin, like Looking Glass Falls and Dragon Master.
Awesome plant. This one can get almost some like pink-orange fall color to it. It's extremely vigorous, as you can see. These 1 gallons are massive. We probably need to pot some of these up and stake them up and just let them weep down from there. We've kept some unstaked because they've been very popular for hanging baskets. If you do put these in a hanging basket, always think about putting a basket that you can control later so you can take the hooks off of. You're not going to have to break your plant to get it out of the pot. So be conscious of that. But an awesome weeping plant. We like the name Fountain of Youth. That was one we were kind of playing around with for a while, and a perfect tree showed up to match it. We kept evaluating seedlings, and this one just fit perfectly with it. We really enjoyed it. We hope the name Fountain of Youth gave it a little something extra to it. I think this one's one of the more misunderstood ones in the group, though. I think people sometimes see it and they think, is it a lace leaf? Because it doesn't really fit in that lace leaf category. It's a heavily divided leaf, but still very much in a Ryusin style shape.
If you stake this up and let it cascade down, it's going to cascade and flow down just like a fountain. And that's where it really gets that name. But these plants are so cool, and all these plants can be grown in such unique ways. I think in Kobayashi Momiji, we went to visit them, we saw Ryusin grown in so many different ways, and all of these can be grown in that similar fashions. There was that one where they had over the walkway, where they'd taken it and they'd ran bamboo across the walkway and let the Ryusin almost sort of climb it and wrap it around it, so you could walk underneath a weeping Japanese maple that was at a walkway.
I've seen some Ryusins or pendulous style maples growing over like Chinese moon doors. Almost gives you that Hobbit-like appeal, like you're going into something. Pretty cool way to do it. Really, so many fun, unique ways to grow this style plant. We compare a lot of these to Ryusin because it's certainly one of the most ones people know about. But these are very malleable plants. You can change the shape of these a good bit. You can make them your own in that they shape very easily. They're very vigorous plants, but because of that weeping habit, you can get as creative as you want. You can grow these on a lattice. You can stake them to a certain height. You can continue to stake them to a massive height if you want, and just keep that growth weeping from the uppermost part. I've seen some 12-foot Ryusins that were just staked right away to a high point and then let weep down. But you can play with these a good bit. Tim was talking about the pots. I've even seen them done in Japan as a topsy-turvy, where they're growing out the bottom of the container and all the foliage rotated around. So I've seen a lot of people in America recently doing the kind of the annual hanging basket look, but you can grow it out of the bottom of that plant too. Now watering can be a little bit tricky. You got to make sure you got good drainage on that pot for sure, but very unique ways to grow these.
The thing that's so cool about if you grow them as a topsy-turvy is that every branch comes down naturally. So then when you flip it over later, bust the pot, cut the pot, flip it over naturally, those branches are hardened off. After those branches harden off, it looks like it's been staked on every branch perfectly. And it gives such a unique style to a plant when you flip it over that that's a cool way to do it. We're going to have to do some for our display garden that way because it's so awesome and so unique. But the cool thing is about this type is you don't have to stake it at all. We were at Michael Steinhardt's garden, and he had a lot of Ryusins just crawling across the ground as a ground cover. And you can do that with these as well. Don't stake them. If they start to develop a central leader, cut one off, or they start to develop some upright growth, and then let them just sort of flow across the ground as a Japanese maple ground cover. I mean, that's so awesome.
Yeah, we're shooting this video of July of 2022, so if you're watching this, there may be new members of the Pendulous Treasures collection in the future. We certainly have some variegated ones we've been evaluating, some unique sporting style, swirling style variegation possibly we've been evaluating. So there may be new members of this Pendulous Treasure collection. We actually threw Nakakomoto Weeping in there as a bonus one to kind of give you the history of how these get started. But the rest of these are fairly exclusive to us, or at least introduced here originally. I'm sure a few of our introductions are starting to get out there at other places now, as these have been very popular for people in the nursery trade to pick up as well.
And I hope all you maple fanatics out there enjoy this content, because these are some cool plants that we've worked really hard to bring to you. I mean, bringing amazing plants to you that came from Japan, bringing plants that we've worked hard to introduce. It takes a lot of work through this process.
For sure, for sure. I hope these add something to your garden, and I hope that you get as much enjoyment out of it as we do. We always like to find things that are new and interesting. Some things have been around for a long time, and they're still awesome, but we love to find that Dragon Master, that new and exciting thing. That's something we're always working on here at Mr. Maple. You may have heard me jokingly refer to them as the Area 51. That's where we keep everything that we have currently under evaluation. So we do a whole evaluation process here at Mr. Maple. And, you know, people may think we named too many plants. We've only named like maybe 10 ever. So it's not that many, but we go through thousands and thousands. I mean, there may be 400,000 seedlings that go through before you get 10 really cool ones.
Yeah,
it's a long process of evaluation. And one thing we do here at Mr. Maple too, before we ever name something, what we do is we name the 7 closest things to it. Or typically the 5 closest things to it for 7 years is our rule. So we name the 5 closest things to it, and we have to be able to say how it's better or different than those. And if you can do that, it may be worth grafting it. And then you want to graft it and evaluate it for 7 years. So that's typically our rule, is 5 and 7. 5 closest things to it. Is it worth doing it? If it is, look at it for 7 years. And if it's cool after 7 years in different locations, you know, it's probably worth getting into the trade.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed this awesome video. I love talking about these plants. These plants are the things that we really enjoy here at our nursery, the things that are unique and different and very special. And I hope you enjoy this as well.
Thanks so much for tuning in. If you like this kind of content, you can definitely support us by shopping on MrMaple.com. Sign up for our weekly emails. Sign up for some of these plants if they're things you're looking for and they're not currently on our website. You can always get notified via email when they're back in stock. But those comments, likes, and shares go a long way toward helping our YouTube channel thrive here. We've been growing a good bit, and we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in.
And make sure to share this with your gardening friends. If you enjoyed this content, they probably will too. Take care.
God bless.
And have a great day.